there was for about a 5-year period something called the General Theory of Leadership Project. The prime movers with that project, James McGregor Burns and Georgia Sorensen, are with us, and as is another participant in that project, Richard Couto. The project, which, as I said, lasted for nearly 5 years, did produce a really excellent book, and if you haven't read The Quest for a General Theory of Leadership, I recommend purchasing it here and taking it home and reading it. There you go. Vanna White, thank you. Why aren't you wearing gold lame? And, but that's the good news. The not so good news, maybe for some people at least, was it did not produce consensus about a general theory. Which brings us to today's topic. What do we do now in terms of defining and legitimating an academic field of leadership studies?
In my remarks, I'd like to separate the question of the legitimacy of leadership studies from the quest for a general theory, because I think if the two are dependent upon each other, we'll never have legitimacy. Because I think general theories are elusive in general, and I have other criticisms that I'll share with you. So some of the things that I know now are affirming what I knew then when I started. Others of them, and I can say that writing the chapter that Gil and I co-authored was a genuine learning experience. That doesn't happen all the time. I mean, you learn some things, but I was writing things, words were appearing on the screen, and I said, am I really saying this? Do I really believe this? For example, perhaps leadership is not important in change. Perhaps change will occur with or without leadership. And that surprised me as much as the blank stares at the beginning. Because control and prediction are important factors, we have to keep in mind the field of theory, which is a power field. For example, if we learned how social change occurs, you can bet that the people who want to prevent social change would use that information to do so. So sometimes it's good that we don't understand what are the progressive features and what contributes to progressive change. So any general theory has to be seen, especially in human behavior, it has to be seen in a field of power. Second, theory underpins laws by which we explain, predict, and control. And the sounder the generalization we can make about human behavior, the more limited its application. We can generalize, don't eat yellow snow. I mean, that's something that we can all agree to. Don't drink downstream from the herd. We can. But if I were to argue that the saxophone is the secret of great rock and roll, we might have a whole lot of controversy over that. So the sake of the generalization, the more limited its application. When we look at the natural sciences, which are very often taken as the exemplars for the social sciences, we find very different paradigmatic assumptions underpinning them. And the new science, the quantum revolution, shattered the physicists who made these discoveries in the early 20th century. And I would say that much of social science has yet to catch up to that. What the natural sciences lends to the social sciences is an emphasis on chaos and complexity theory, and an emphasis on patterns of probability rather than complete certainty. So the natural sciences offer us a model which we often don't emulate in trying to imitate what is essentially a Newtonian approach to science. As governor in California, Earl Warren had a hand in the internment of the Japanese Americans during World War II. And he was ashamed of his actions in the 1940s. and he set out, in a sense, to redeem himself. And there was a case brought up in California that continued the legal segregation of Mexican-American students in public schools. 2 federal courts found that case, that law, constitutional. As governor, Warren lobbied the legislature to pass legislation that removed segregation for Mexican-American students. It was a case that almost anteceded in many of its details of Brown v. Board of Education. And the story gets more complex than that because the Mexican-American who brought that case had the funds to do so because he was farming the land of one of the Japanese that had been displaced and dislocated and who left his land in the care of that family. And so sometimes things work out in curious patterns, and consequently any generalization is very often best made from hindsight rather than foresight. But I would say that within any of these boxes, what you have going on are people working for change, conflicting with each other, collaborating with each other, and within these 3 common features of all of them, they're working for different values, taking different initiative, including different people, and also doing it differently, that is creativity. And that brings us to a quantum leadership model, which Tom says in the book we couldn't put on the printed page, and this is one of the reasons. And what I'm suggesting is that this is applicable at the individual as well as the system level and fits within every box within that diagram. So I think we have the beginnings of some theory, but we'd be better off imitating the natural sciences as natural scientists practice them rather than trying to follow some semblance of 19th century Newtonian paradigms within science.